Jaya Sachitananda Namine Namo Bhaktivinodaya Sachitananda Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of the Goswamis, headed by Sri Rupa. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki Jai is coming up now, isn't it? Tomorrow is Gundicha Marjana, correct? Gundicha Marjana tomorrow. And then what happens? Rath Yatra on Tuesday. So, we're doing? That'd be nice, have a small Rath Yatra at New Mayapur on Tuesday. Let's see. But today is you could say, very special day. The energy, the transcendental energy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is personified as Gadadhar Pandit also. In one sense, we could see like that. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that same mood of spreading that transcendental mercy, transcendental light into this dark world, bringing pleasure to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his pastimes. He has his internal, external. Gadadhar Pandit is mostly involved in the internal, let's say, churning of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's purpose for coming to experience Vipalamba Bhav, or the love that Srimati Radharani has for Krishna. Krishna comes himself to experience that as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to assist him in that intimate desire, to fulfill that desire. Radharani is also expanded as Gadadhar Pandit to enhance that experience of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of feeling that separation of Srimati Radharani. But the other purpose, the interaction with this world, is to enlighten, to spread, to preach, to wake up the conditioned souls who are sleeping, forgetting their true identity and their relationship with Krishna. So his pure devotees, they are those limbs, his weapons, his limbs, by which he achieves this purpose. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is one of the primary limbs, as Gadadhar Pandit was most primary in enhancing, amongst others, of course, were there too, in enhancing the Lord's desire to experience the highest love of God, which God cannot experience, loving himself. So he appears in this form in order to experience that, what it is like to love Krishna in its fullest extent. So similarly in preaching, his devotees, the Goswamis, are mentioned here, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is said to be in the line of the Goswamis, the same mood of compassion on all the conditioned souls of this world, on everyone. And how do they show their compassion? Not just by trying to improve their material lot. People are getting their material lot according to their karma, whether they like it or not. They get their lot. The pure devotees of the Lord, they will come to release the living entities by showering upon them. The Goswamis, they showered upon the world transcendental songs about Govinda. When there's a blazing forest fire, how can we extinguish that blazing forest fire? It may burn itself out, amongst other things, But if we want it to be extinguished, there has to be a tremendous rainstorm, a rain cloud, so that it pours down on the forest to extinguish that blazing fire which is in our hearts. There's a blazing fire of material desire in our hearts, burning, fueled by lust. And how to transform, how to extinguish that? People don't want to, maybe. They want to increase the fire sometimes. They think that will make us happier. But the devotees, they're showering down transcendental sound vibrations in the form of songs, in the form of instructions, the holy name. Their very presence itself is cooling, but particularly their instructions, which will help us to extinguish this blazing fire of material existence by showering bhakti, or by bringing bhakti into this world, manifesting bhakti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur manifest this love for Krishna in this world by showering his mercy on the conditioned souls of this world. For now, we are very fortunate. One time, Prabhupada said that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he could have single-handedly spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And he was asked why he didn't do it, and Prabhupada said he left it to us. Gave us this opportunity to get on the bandwagon. Is the most, I say, the mercy wagon. We're mercy cases. But this Sankirtan movement, this spreading of the holy name, this mission, which Srila Prabhupada has made accessible to the world, Srila Prabhupada, is the most greatest good fortune to be on board. We may still be meditating on what it's like to not be on board, for whatever attached reasons we may have, let's say due to our polluted consciousness and our false egos. We're still very attracted to the items of seeing things separately from Krishna. But if we stay on the bandwagon, or we stay on the boat which the pure devotees give us to cross this ocean, then we will cross the ocean. We just have to stay on board. That's the main thing. Don't get bored, stay on board. And the boat, by the mercy of the pure devotees, will take us across the great ocean of material birth and death. So Bhaktivinoda came, Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda came at a time when it was a very... the teachings of even the Bhagavad Gita, but the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, particularly his mission to spread the holy name to every town and village, to give love of God, to bring people to a platform of pure Shuddha Sattva, the pure platform, had been more or less lost over the centuries since his appearance. And if at all present, it was hidden in the hearts of a few recluses who were Babajis, if at all. But as far as the general populace was concerned, there was no awareness of the pure teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Books were not at that time available. The only literature of a very, you could say, primitive form was basically explaining the many perversions of Lord Chaitanya's pure teachings had arisen, particularly this sahaja of making everything very cheap. You can do what you like and enjoy your senses as much as you wish and just chant Hare Krishna. Something like this. So degraded, very degraded behavior was seen by the general populace as the movement of Vaishnavas. There were no good examples in public, at least. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, well, he was born in 1838 in February in Ulagram, Birnagar, which is somewhere south of Mayapur, between Mayapur and Calcutta somewhere. And he was born into this world, came into this world, you could say, at a time which was ripe for now introducing or reintroducing in a way which was adaptable to the situation, the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to give everyone this highest gift. So he was born unusual. His family had Vaishnavas in the family, but of some kind. But they were mostly Shaktas. They were worshippers of the material energy, Durga Devi. And he was born in a rich family of like landowners, almost like kings. Rich family, very opulent family, had elephants and so many things in their family, paraphernalia. They were very rich. But fate has, he was given the name Kedarnath, referring to Lord Shiva. Kedarnath Datta, that was the name at birth. And he was born with quite a few children, maybe 6 or 7 siblings, 5 or 6 siblings. And he was brought up like that, with mostly exposure to the Shakta worshipping going on. There was also Vaishnavas, his uncle was a Vaishnava. But and he also had that opportunity to associate, of course. As a scholar, as a student, he was very sharp. But schools in those days were village schools, and he tells himself in his own biography that he had a very cruel teacher. The cruel teacher would, employ some of the elder boys to get favors from the younger boys. He was utilizing people to get things. And the children were somewhat terrorized by the teacher to such an extent that one of Bhaktivinoda's brothers took it upon himself to stop this misbehavior, and he took a machete and chased the teacher out of the school with a machete. They were pretty cruel, you could say. By modern standards, we would say like that. We could say modern standards are also very cruel, because they're making children into, unfortunate zombies, etc. They have no idea of what the goal of life is. Materialistic idiots, basically. But the perversion was there. So anyway, he went through his school, and different things happened in the family. His body was always suffering. An interesting thing, Bhaktivinoda Thakur suffered many illnesses in his life. We sometimes think, why does this come upon the great devotees? And then sometimes people say, His Holiness Bhakti True Maharaj, why is this? Well, they have lessons to teach us. Krishna teaches through his pure devotees. Either warnings or just to show how to be Krishna. We're all going to face it. This material world is full of birth, death, disease, and old age, and they teach us how to be Krishna conscious in the midst of this dukkhalayam shashvatam, in the midst of this distressful place. They teach us how to be Krishna conscious, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. No matter what came along, he persevered. Of course, when he was young, he wasn't so much into Vaishnavism at all, practically. As a child, just one of the things on the menu. But it wasn't emphasized. It wasn't until quite later on, actually, when he was a student, later on, that the awareness or the awakening of his devotion, and this sometimes happens. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in his youth, childhood and youth, he wasn't manifesting pure Vaishnavism. He was a scholar. He was more involved in Nyaya and grammar and Sanskrit studies and so on than he was in logic and in reason, rather than more involved in that than he was in devotion to Krishna. But then when the time was right, then he manifested. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur also was more inclined towards the impersonal school. He also became very inclined towards the teachings of Lord Jesus, because he saw that they seemed to be very merciful, at least on the materialistic platform. They seemed very merciful teachings. He got involved in many different schools of thought and studied the various schools of thought very deeply. He studied the Quran, he studied the Bible, he studied the various teachings of various Indian or, let's say, Vedic schools. And he became very aware of all these various teachings. Western philosophers, he was really into studying Western philosophers. He became, and again, he was very brilliant. He could really quickly pick things up. It wasn't like he had to sit there for days on end just trying to understand something. It was very easy for him. But he had many misfortunes. By the time he was 11 years old, all 4 of his brothers had left their bodies. And then his father left his body. By the time he was 11, he just had his mother and sister. I don't think he had any other siblings. And by the time he was 12, his mother got him married. Pretty late. Early, I mean. And his wife was 5 years old. Inconceivable. Nobody knows the science of this nowadays. They don't want to know about it. It's like absolutely horrendous in the minds of people nowadays, because married life is for sense gratification. What's the point otherwise? Enjoy yourselves. Huh? Yeah. Make your own choices and suffer. In the Vedic society, even in the Western society, they were much more serious about marriage. It's such a serious thing. It's for becoming God conscious. It's not for sense gratification. And maybe there is a byproduct, but the main thing is to facilitate the soul's release from the material world. It's nothing to do with, all the present day paradigms that people base it upon. The goal of married life is to become God conscious. There's not other reasons. That maybe influences are there, but the main reason is God consciousness. So parents got him married. It was like a child, like a doll. They didn't know what was going on. But the astrology and everything else seemed to be good, and therefore and plus his brothers and his father had passed away, so his mother got him married. She needed it. And then at the age of 12, he wrote his first book called the Poriad, some poet book of some kind or another. He finished it. He didn't finish it. He finished it a few years later. But as a youth, he was going through all these various studies. Of course, he was married. He wasn't living with his wife until she was of age. But later on, of course, his wife grew up, and then living together, they had a child. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to university and was studying whatever philosophies and things at university, language, philosophy, whatever. And he was very much a scholar. He even formed his own kind of society there at the university in the studies, debates, and so on and so forth. Very much into understanding the various minds and why people do what they do. Great psychologist. But at a certain point of time in his family situation had really gone down. They became really poverty-stricken, practically speaking. Everything was lost when the father passed away, and I think the grandfather, mother, and this one. So all passing away, and others squandered their wealth. So he had to get a job even before finishing his studies. So somehow or other he got a job as a teacher to maintain his family. And somewhere in Orissa, he started working as a teacher, teaching, I think he was teaching English or something, teaching something. And time went on, his wife passed away. First the child passed away, the wife passed, everyone seemed to be passing away. He got married again to Bhagavati Devi. But about that time, he came in contact with the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first time a bona fide copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he said in his own words, as soon as he studied the Chaitanya Charitamrita, his anurag awoke within his heart. Anurag is genuine spiritual emotions, which are actually not to be imitated, although some people may. They're actually a manifestation of the heart's loving affection towards Krishna arose in his heart. Different emotions, burning emotions of loving relationship with Krishna arose within his heart, just by reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And from that day on, he embraced the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and became a great proponent of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He went from job to job, and he ended up, the British, of course, were in ruling position in India. This is back in the mid 1860s. We're in the 1860s. And he was given a post. He studied further law and various things. And he entered into a position in the court in Jagannath Puri after some time as the magistrate in the court in Jagannath Puri in Orissa. And he was so expert, the British government could see how expert he was. Now, one of the qualities of a Vaishnava, and the primary characteristic almost of a Vaishnava, is called simplicity, genuine straightforwardness. He would never take any humbug, as he would use the word humbug. No, people would generally bribe in courts, etc. At least he used to. He wouldn't go there. He wouldn't have anything to do with it. Truth is truth. Even on the material platform, he was down to the T. He wouldn't tolerate misbehavior. And he was so quick in dealing with the court cases. He would be able to analyze a case very quickly and then give the judgment very quickly. He didn't have to sit around for days on end listening to various testimonies. He could very quickly analyze. And he would deal with many cases in one day. Many, many cases. The government was very surprised how he could finish the cases in half time. By half day, he finished all the cases. What is this man doing? They would go home and they'd see, what is he doing? And there he is at home, writing, studying, writing, typing, and so on. He wouldn't waste a second. What was he writing, typing? Studying about Krishna conscious literature, writing Krishna conscious, prolific writer. He wrote hundreds of books, amazing books. One of the greatest things he did, like the Goswamis, was to compile literatures for our benefit. And anyone can see that this movement, this ISKCON movement, is very much aligned with the teachings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his writings. You can see Srila Prabhupada's train of preaching is very much following in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's line. And he wrote so many wonderful books like Jaiva Dharma and Chaitanya Sikshamrita and Harinam Chintamani, and so many books. He wrote so many wonderful, wonderful books. And he had his wife, through Bhagavati, he had about 12 children. 1 or 2 passed away. But he had 10 living children. And his mission was that they all became, to all of them, he wanted them all to become devotees. He even said one time, if you don't assist me in my mission of spreading Krishna consciousness, you can eat in someone else's house. Don't eat in mine. What's the use of you if you're not helping me in Krishna? This is like inconceivable to modern mentality. But this is the real fact, that, the real purpose of human life is to become Krishna conscious, God conscious. And the real point of having a child is to assist in that purpose, not just to entangle them in the material world. There are billions of such people all over the universe. You don't need any more. We need devotees to help us to wake up. So he's very strict with his children like that. Very strict with himself. His daily schedule when he was in Puri, according to one of his sons, was that he would rise. He would go to bed early because, he liked to sleep like all of us. He would go to bed really early at 8 o'clock at night. And he would get up at 10. That was it. That was his sleep. And he would work all night, writing, studying, chanting, writing, studying, chanting. all night till the early mornings. And then in the early morning, he would, after many hours of writing, studying, chanting, in the early morning he might write some letters. He might, to any mail that may be there, take a little nap, take a chapati and a cup of milk before going to the court. Go to the court. By 9:30 he'd be in the court. And deal with the cases up to lunchtime. Usually finish the cases by lunchtime. Then go back home for a little lunch. Maybe go to the temple, because the British government at that time made him the temple manager of the big temple of Jagannath Temple in Puri. Why? Because he was so honest and straightforward and strict. So they wanted someone to sort out all the misbehavior. There was a lot of misuse of money. So they put him in charge. And he would also oversee the Jagannath Puri temple. Can you imagine? One of these things would be more than any normal person could handle. 10 children, chief magistrate in the court, head of the managing the Jagannath Puri temple, writing prolifically 4 to 6 hours a day. Any of these things is more than a normal person could handle. Imagine having 10 kids, my God. These days, one kid is too much. He was doing all this, empowered, not of this world. Maybe showing a lesson that no matter what we are, you can become Krishna conscious. They do, the pure devotees show that sometimes. They appear to be non-devotees. And then they show us how to become a pure devotee. It gives us a little hope. So he was, schedule was so intense. And then he would come back home, take a little time with the family, little bit of chapati and milk again, take rest 8 o'clock, like his day was like clockwork. He would hold a clock. He'd have one of these old kind of clocks you put in your pocket watch. And every minute he would, now it's time for this, tick. He would check everything by the minute. Very super regulated. Prabhupada also took that from his own Guru, but particularly from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Being on time, not late, please. Very strict with time. Time is Krishna. Anyway, life was going on like that in Puri. One time there was a situation, because he'd given birth, he was praying for a ray of Vishnu. He felt, look, this movement has to be spread. I need some special personality to spread this movement. He was praying for a ray of Vishnu, and Bimala Prasad was born, later to be known as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But whilst he was there in Puri, there were many upstarts, personalities who were making false claims. I am God, worship me. There was one named Bishikashain. He was famous personality. He was actually a threat to the British Raj. He was trying to make an uprising against the British rule. So the British government requested Bhaktivinoda Thakur to sort this out. So he went there to the place where this Bishikashain was residing. And Bishikashain had thousands of followers, thousands and thousands. He was a mystic. He had big bushy hair. He had mystic powers. He was claiming he was none other than Vishnu himself. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur made investigations. He found that this particular personality was actually enticing the wives of many of his followers to enjoy illicit connections with him, claiming that he was the supreme and they were his consorts on the spiritual plane. Of course, it was rather a mundane plane that he was consorting with them on. But he found these things out, then he discovered more about his behavior, how he was cheating people and so on and so forth. And not only that, but yes, it was true that he was speaking against the British government, treason basically speaking. So Bhaktivinoda went there and he said, yes, why have you, I know why you've come. He didn't even ask, I know why you've come. Tell me, and I know you have guards with you, but I'll tell you one thing. I will be shortly throwing out the British government. The king and everyone will be ousted, and I will make you one of the leaders of India if you surrender to me. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I'm God. And Bhaktivinoda said, why you were here? Why you're not in Puri? He said, I am the living God. In Puri, that is simply a wooden idol. So that was the last straw. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur then ordered him to be arrested. The guards came forward. Fire came out of his hair. He had mystic powers. And they couldn't get near. But Bhaktivinoda, eventually, they said, all right then, if you insist, because you are my devotee, he said to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I will, because you are my devotee, I will reciprocate with you and agree to be arrested. So they took him off in the cart. They had a big bullock cart. Took him off to Puri. And there he was tried in the court. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the judge. 18 days. It was quite intense. Tens of thousands of people were outside banging, complaining. This is injustice and so on. Bhaktivinoda was not daunted. He was undaunted. After many days, this Bishop Shane said, look, I've given you a chance. If you don't come to your senses now and stop playing around like this, you will see your whole family, you and everyone will all die. I assure you. Bhaktivinoda didn't take heed, but he didn't follow his words of warning. He went home. Sure enough, that night, all of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's family became so sick with intense fever. Intensive fever. Terrible fever. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so sick, but he didn't buckle under. He went to the court the next morning, even though he was extremely sick, as if he wasn't sick. He went to the court, and final day of the court. This was an unusual case. Normally he would deal quickly, but this was an unusual case. It was a Maha case. So on that last day, then he proclaimed him guilty. Guilty of, ultimately, the actual guilty was of a spiritual nature, but from the legal point of view of treason, and sentenced him to prison. And of course there's an uproar from the public. They were screaming in anger, and Bhaktivinoda and this Bishop Shane was saying, you will see now what happens. And then Bhaktivinoda ordered one of the British officers to sever his hair. The officer went down with a pair of scissors quickly as he was being taken away and cut off all of his hair. The poor fellow became impotent, lost all of his power, and committed suicide in the prison. Lost everything. Everyone realized that he was a fake. There were a few like this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and another incident took place in the Jagannath Puri temple, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw that so much, the British had asked him to investigate, that so much of the income from the Jagannath Puri temple was being misused. And who was misusing it? None other than the king of Orissa. He was usurping the wealth of the temple. And so Bhaktivinoda discovered this. On top of that, he made a very strict regulation. They were very lazy in their regulation. The offerings were not going on properly. He established a very strict schedule, 56 offerings a day, something like that, every day on time. Very strict. The king was really upset. He was poking his nose in here. Who's this man think he is? I'm the king. I'll get rid of him. He's getting in my way. Have you ever noticed politicians, when people start pointing out their faults, get rid of them? You ever known that? Anyone from America? So the king of Orissa, he really was upset. So he employed his court Brahmins to perform a great yajna to kill Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And they're performing this yajna with the intention of killing him. Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, not worried, he's totally depending on Krishna. And after the yajna was finished, they expected Bhaktivinoda Thakur to die. But what happened was the king's only son died on the spot. Yes, you can't. The pure devotees are not under the laws of nature. Although they may appear to work within them, they're not under them. So he he had to surrender. But there's other reasons. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was always desiring, actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur established a kutir opposite the samadhi of Haridas Thakur. He established his kutir there, which has now been transformed into some kind of ISKCON temple. And he had his kutir there. Unfortunately, it wasn't preserved, and there he was performing bhajans as well as doing everything else. And eventually he wanted very much, sometimes he was going here and there, but he wanted very much to go closer to the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. In Janma Karma Chame Divyam, this famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, one who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities does not upon quitting this body take his birth again, but goes back to Godhead. So he achieved this. He discovered the actual birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as well as spreading his teachings and explaining the real nature of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which people didn't understand, through his writings, through his activities. So he went back to Bengal, not far from where he was born. And there he got a post in Krishnanagar, as in the government service there in Krishnanagar. And he wanted to get closer and closer. Now he's close to Navadvip, where Lord Chaitanya appeared, but nobody really knew the place. So he went to Navadvip, and on the other side of the river to Mayapur Navadvip, it's called Godruma. And there he put up a little hut. It wasn't where it is now. It was first of all in the place of Sarabikunj, where Lord Nityananda had started the Namahat. So then he started Namahat. Namahat is the marketplace of the holy name, where you chant, and you get other people to chant, and then they carry on chanting, and you go somewhere else and get other people to chant. And this way, and you keep some system of keeping it all together. He even wrote a whole book, Godruma Kalpatavi, on the whole process of this Namahat program. And he started himself there in Sarabikunj, there in Godruma Dweep. And then he was going regularly to there, and then he decided he would get a house nearby there in Sakatakunj, nearby Sarabikunj, and he built a house there and started to live there. So in order to facilitate his service in Krishnanagar, the British government built a railway line from his house to Krishnanagar. It's still there today. You can see right in front of his house, the railway line goes. So he could go by train every day to work in Krishnanagar. British government built a train line. Amazing. And he was living there and working, and my family is sort of there, of course. Publishing, writing still, and preaching Namahat. He established over 500 Namahatas in different villages. Over 500. Amazing. And then he also was thinking how to find where is Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. Nobody seemed to really know. There were all kinds of rumors and different people claims there, but none of them fitted, because he discovered that Navadvip, which they said was the birthplace, was a new place. It's only recently been developed. Others said it's been lost under the course of the Ganga. So he studied old maps, British maps, when they first came to India. And he's talked to various local people, etc., etc. And he had he saw on the map, one of the maps, that said Mayapur. A place called Mayapur. One day when he was sitting, and he was in the Rani Damshal in Navadvip, different times. And he looked across the Ganga, and he saw this bright light emanating. And he went to that place the next day. Sure enough, it was the place that said Mayapur on the map. When he reached there was a small hill with tulsis growing on, mostly Muslim people. And they all who were afraid of this hill, they said, there's something mystical about this hill. We don't go there. We don't go on there. We don't, keep away. It's something mystical. And then some of the local sadhus said, they were saying that, yes, this is actually the place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth. So to confirm that this was the actual place, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had taken he had his own spiritual master, Bihari Goswami, was his actual initiating Babaji was an initiating spiritual master, but he had taken siksha from Jagannath Das Babaji. He'd taken shelter basically. So he brought Jagannath Das Babaji there to confirm it. And at that time, Jagannath Das Babaji was still very young. He was only 125 years old. So he was carried on a basket. Imagine, he was 125 years old. People don't know. I was listening to Prabhupada yesterday. He was talking about Kumbh Mela, and he said that some of these young people, you see these young Indian sadhus here, they're over 300 years old. They look like teenagers almost. And they have no idea of, what's going on. So Jagannath Das Babaji, 125 years old, was carried in a basket, he was blind. And as soon as they reached that place, he jumped out of the basket and started shouting, this is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. This is the birthplace. He started dancing, he was crippled. He started dancing like anything. This is the place, this is the place, this is the place. So all the evidence put together, then he began to establish that place as the actual place of Chaitanya. And to this day, everyone accepts it now as the actual birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he did that, the Jamma. And that next year, 1896, he sent some of his writings to the Western world. First time pure Vaishnava literatures came to the West. This little book, Lord Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts, and a few other literatures were sent to the Western world, and they were found later on by ISKCON devotees in different universities and places in the West, the British Museum, Montreal University Library, and different places they were found. I think in Paris there's also one. Of these books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur were found. So he was the first one. And that same year, Srila Prabhupada appeared. Prabhupada said it was not by chance. It was prophetic. Anyway, he carried on preaching, distributing books, opening up Namahatas. Very incredible, inconceivable, impossible for a human being to achieve what he did. Absolutely impossible. Not within human scope to write so many literatures and on so many topics and in such a complete way. Without a Google, without, computers, no help like that, but just from his realization and his learning. And inspiration from the Lord, of course. We're going to finish up, but because he had Bhaktivinoda Thakur at Veshi with his Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, got him initiated and then engaged him very much in the printing press, establishing printing presses to publish, edit, distribute books and magazines and newsletters and so on and so forth, very profoundly everywhere in different languages and so on and so forth. And then eventually he established in Calcutta a base in Calcutta called Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta, and he would go there preaching. But then around about 1910, he decided to totally retire and take Babaji. And he just retired into Bhakti Bhavan for the last years of his life. And in 1914, on June the 23rd, he went into complete samadhi and departed his body in Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta. Okay, just a few points. There are many more. And later on we'll sing, read, chant, etc. more about Bhaktivinoda Thakur if Krishna allows. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. We'll leave this till later. We'll leave that till later. And whatever later is. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Bhagavati. You have a good name.
Yes.
You don't have 10 children, though. 12 children. You did. You had one, that was enough. His
family guru, Bhaktivinoda, he didn't agree about the birth cycle of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, there were some differences of opinion there. Yeah, there were. That's one of the reasons he took. With respect, he always respected him, but he didn't agree on certain things. Gurus. There's different types of gurus, and sometimes we have family gurus. Sometimes you have Varna gurus. Sometimes you have different types of gurus. So it's just traditional that one takes a guru. So to a certain point, he took that initiation from Bipini Bihari. But at a certain point, then he had realized he had to now take shelter. Well, not that had to, but he did. He himself was self-reliant. He's an eternal associate of the Lord. He's not a conditioned soul. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is none other than Kamala Manjari, who's the direct Manjari assisting Rupa Manjari in Goloka Vrindavan. So he's not of this world, but to further his, let's say, service in this world, he took shelter or took siksha, let's say, siksha from, or soul, that Jagannath Das Babaji was like his siksha guru, which is the main line in our parampara. Again, teaching the most important thing is the siksha, and not just the diksha. So he considered Jagannath Das Babaji as his connection, although he had a diksha connection, but when there was some controversy there, I say difference of opinion, call it as you will, then he didn't accept on that level. But these personalities are on a very high level. We do sometimes see that even great acharyas, they present different things in terms of even on philosophy sometimes for different reasons. It's not our business to get into analysis or argumentation or acceptance or rejection necessarily. We accept Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda, we're in his line, so we accept his teaching. And Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, it's a fact. Accepting that which is favourable, rejecting that which is unfavourable. He had a business to do, and we can see the result. Now that millions of people are going to Mayapur, he also had that vision, of course, very well known to members of our movement, that we had this vision also, the great city coming up in Mayapur. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj started the ball rolling by establishing some ashrams there in Mayapur. But the fulfillment of this still work in progress, but the present temple being constructed, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium and Bhuta Mandir, is the heart of this great prophecy of Bhakti. I'll just read one prophecy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, since he fulfilled all the various limbs of Lord Chaitanya, where he put things in motion, Lord Chaitanya's mission. I'll just read one statement. Where is this now? Maybe on the next page. Don't know where I've written it. Here it is. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur predicted, he made quite a few predictions. He said, very soon the unparalleled path of Harinam Sankirtan will be propagated all over the world. He foresaw the day when Vaishnavas from all over the world would come to Mayapur and chant Jai Sachinandan together with the Bengali Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And Srila Prabhupada was the one who acted. This is a footnote. Oh, for that day, he said, when the fortunate English, French, Russian, and American people will take up banners, mridungas, and cartels, and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. Even the French people. The fortunate French people, he says. The fortunate French people will take up mridungas, banners, cartels, and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? Oh, for the day when the fair-skinned men from their side, chanting Jai Sachinanda Ki Jai, will extend their arms in embracing devotees of our country coming from our side, treat us with brotherly feeling. When will that day be? And then he further went on in another writing, he said that day will soon come when a personality will go all over the world unrestrictedly, spreading this message everywhere. So those are just a couple of little things which he predicted. Hare Krishna. So 10, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock? Kirtan, 11 o'clock. So to the class, Adi Shekhar Prabhu is giving class today. How many books were distributed yesterday? Do we have a record? Yes. Book distribution. And the Hari Nam in tours yesterday. And those 12 devotees went from here, I think. And how many books? Wow. Jai. Some small books. Jai. Haribo. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur will be very pleased with the devotees who are continuing to distribute these books all over the world. Huh? "12 went from here, I think. From here, maybe 11, or 10, 11, 12 from here. Then there were a few from tours.
12 from here and 2 in tours.
There you go. About 14 devotees. Very nice. Wonderful. And next Saturday, by the way, is the Vedic 10th anniversary calendar, Vedic anniversary of Indra Prabhu's passing away on the Vedic calendar next Saturday. That's the Vedic calendar, next Saturday, 10th anniversary. So it's a good day to do Harinam. Yeah. Anything else? Shri Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi.